legal, finance, marketing, etc. So bringing all the key business pieces together and upskilling the entrepreneur. And then we have laboratories, as I mentioned, in Cape Town and in Rwanda, where we support the IK holders, one, to standardize their products, and where possible, in partnerships with some of the universities, demonstrate the efficacy. Now, that technical component we do in two ways. One is the lab is open access, so if you have the skill set, you can come into the lab and you can do that development and testing on your own, or you commission us and we do that on your behalf. So that's a critical gap that most incubators don't have, is the technical capability to progress the technology readiness level of the idea, but also providing the key standardization tools to help an IK holder get to the next stage. And then the final intervention that we have is how do we interface with the market? Now, you're working with indigenous knowledge holders, which mostly sit in the informal economy. And where we play an important role is creating market links so that they can get their products into mainstream formal economy shelves, like, you know, Dis-Chem, Pick n Pay, etc. Now, and I'm just going to say this last point before I hand over. The one thing that we struggle with all our businesses and IK holders that we help across the value chain, is how do you navigate the regulatory requirements for an IK-based product? The challenge that I have, and you know, working across Africa, this is not a South African problem. In fact, South Africa is probably a little bit better than the rest of Africa from our regulatory framework, is that there isn't a clear regulatory framework for IK-based products, which creates a huge gap. It creates a lot of stress for the entrepreneur and the IK holder to get their products to the market. And what we see is, because there isn't a dedicated IK framework, the most stringent regulatory requirements are applied, which is for a pharmaceutical product. And this is counterintuitive if we want to grow the bioeconomy. And as I mentioned, working across Africa in this sector, indigenous knowledge-based products is what I see as going to be the key contributor to growing the economy of this continent. And if we cannot deregulate some of these things or make regulatory hurdles less stringent, and I'm not saying make it easy, but there's some requirements that are actually over the top. If we can find some kind of balance, we will get these products to the market a lot quicker and contributing to the economy a lot sooner.
Thank you.
Am I on?
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
All right, I'm Patrick Zitobilef Toya from Tiger Brands. I work for a for-profit organization, an FMCG to be specific. So, you know, by definition, you know, the turnaround time for a lot of things is very fast. So the sympathy for a new entity or a beginner is very small. But what I'm trying to bring forth here is that Tiger Brands that I work for, we make money, we want to compete. So the support for the next person, it is not very visible in our strategy. So any support that we give is more, you know, on the corporate social responsibility side. And also, if we do support someone who comes up with a new innovation, a new product line, it is for the benefit of both of us. However, there is a room for your product or for your initiative. It is strategic, though, at this point in time, from the way I see it. We
1, 2, 1, 2.
So the way the big corporates work, okay, maybe in my case, we have huge portfolios, we call them categories. And each one, in order to bring a new product or new innovation, it has to be something that aligns with that, strategy of that specific category or business. In other words, to bring in something new, something that will disrupt, you'd have to really put up a lot of motivation for it and justify. Having said that is Tiger as a business, And then now coming to what I see as Tiger's offering to up and coming, business, SMMEs. We've got a couple of offerings. If you go to the Tiger Brands Enterprise Development Program, it's targeted at young people, at previously disadvantaged, and it's offered in two ways. One is to support you, to help you find a market, to create a scale for you, to upskill you. The other side, it is to collaborate. In other words, it may be a marketing right, it may be something that will partner with you, but for commercial gain, both to you and us. That's brief, what Tiger is about and how we operate. Thank you.
1, 2, 1, 2. Hi everyone, my name is Seth Khaltuki, head of 20 Farms. So some background. When we were initially appointed by DSI to work with the IKS beneficiaries, what we found and what we've worked on the last 3 years is for them to understand the potential behind the products that they have. Sometimes when you're exposed to something for too long, you don't understand the value of it. So most of these co-ops were set up as co-ops, these businesses, and ours was to first break down the understanding of a co-op and its challenges, help assist them to move to PTY so that they can run the businesses like businesses. So sometimes the co-op is run like a social club. Let's all hang out and do something nice and enjoy it. But then people get discouraged one by one and they drop off. So we spent the first year purely working on understanding of running a business, the compliance that comes with it. Because in a lack of compliance, you can't apply for funding, whether it's government or it's corporate. If you have no financials, you can never get funding. So we focused on that in the first year. And then the second year, then we worked on development of their own farms, having alternative income streams. If you look closely with the IKS space, is quite small in this development, meaning the products are there, but access to market has been the biggest issue. And that biggest issue obviously creates the problem of cash flow in the businesses. So people start off with a group of 10. 2 years, they drop off to 8. By the 5th year, only 2 members are left. And all they say is, there's no money in this thing. I'm like, yeah, there's no money when you start, like in anything. However, if you have alternative income streams, you can still work on your long-term vision without losing track and momentum of what you're trying to achieve. So we work from end to end in business, understanding the running of it, and also getting them all the way up to the shelf stage. Thank you.
Thanks. We throw you into the deep end, but you can just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your entity, as well as how it is that you are working with knowledge holders, just to create these as part of the private sector in creating sustainability along the chain.
Okay, thank you. My apologies, I was sitting in the wrong room. So yeah, I think like Tuni, we were appointed 2022 to work with some of the IKS projects. So my name is Michael Magondo. I'm from a company called Wouldn't It Be Cool? We focus on entrepreneur development and across all industries. Now, this was our first encounter with IKS. And having worked across many other industries, you assume, well, there's entrepreneurs who are coming for acceleration, These are businesses that have products. There's been significant investment put into these businesses. So it's a simple process. We pick a target. We want to grow into X. We want to list. We want to grow regionally, whatever it is. And usually we look at 18, 24-month type timelines, and we work hard to achieve that. And our experience was dramatic. I think, as Seth pointed out, we were lucky in that we didn't have cooperatives. We had companies. We had registered companies, great products. So when you looked at it, you thought this should not be just a no-brainer. But I think one of the experiences or one of the realizations we came to very quickly is that these projects started off as research projects, and we've never graduated from being a research project. So the aim is to try and accelerate commercially a project that is still stuck within almost a research mindset. And that becomes very difficult. The second thing, I think our experience on the access to market was slightly different. We were able to, with some of the projects we work with, look and define a target for retail penetration, and the guys were able to move thousands of units a month to go from where majority of the market was doing farmers markets and shows and moving a few units with the whole experience factor to actually realizing we're an FMCG manufacturer. Just because we say we came from IKS doesn't make us any special. And FMCG says you put a product on a shelf, people must pick it up. You must move thousands of those for very little per unit, and hopefully you make money at the end of the month. And when you start defining what the minimum volumes the guys need to do, you very quickly realize many of the things we see as access to market are just not good enough. You have to get into markets and channels that can move thousands of units, sometimes at very low margins. But when you add it all together, that starts to make sense. Second thing is you must know who's likely to pick your product off a shelf and who's not. And those were the things that we actually ended up spending a lot more time working with many of our entrepreneurs around. And in that process, we're happy to say out of the group that we had, there's still one questionable party, but out of the group that we had, majority of the guys were commercially sustainable in their own right, being able to pay for the costs of running that business out of the proceeds that come from sales, not from stipends or grants or subsidies that come through any of the agencies. And in that process, ensure that they can call their own shots. I'll stop there.
No, thank you very much. I think there's a common theme, and throwing it right back at you guys is that you've identified that there's a gap between the transition from the research environment into the commercial arena, one. And two, for me, that I want to bring in is that when you're talking scale, because that's what you're saying actually, is that the scale required for commercial success, it's not automatically embedded in an IKS product that has got issues around sustainability, harvesting, and. So what do you think is missing? I mean, we've got researchers here, we've got the academia here who are running those projects. And for me, you used an important word when you started, one of you, when you said the projects. I think it was a recurring thing even in the presentations yesterday, is that the teams were not looking for investment, they're still looking for funding. How do you support someone to make that shift between this is a great research project to we have a commercially viable product here and the T's and C's that go with that? Any one of you can take it.
Okay, maybe I'll kick off. Coming from quite a diverse background, so I started work in the IKS space at the CSR, where we very much focused on research and product development, with a hope and a goal to get these products to the market, which happened, but not to the level of success that we would have liked. And now working in the entrepreneurial space, where it's at the interface of science and business, this problem becomes very, very clear. And there's a few things that I'm going to mention now that actually perpetuate the problem. Some of it at the early stage of the value chain, and the translation into commercial products at the later stage of the value chain. So, and I've seen some of the entrepreneurs and indigenous knowledge holders here over the last 2 days that I worked with when I was at the CSR, and a lot hasn't changed with the way they operate, in that they're always looking for research funding, or they're always looking for grants to move their products to the next stage. Some of it, the logical movement across the value chain is not entirely the entrepreneur's fault, but some of it is, because they move from grant to grant with no real intent to get to the market. And this is something that I think probably our financing structure needs to accommodate for. Indigenous knowledge is a very important sector, but it's also a sexy sector, especially if you look at the available government funding. So there's always grants available, and it's easy to access, but with no clear goals to get that product to the market. So that's one part of it. The other key component is, and I met an old friend of mine that I worked with at CSR, one of the indigenous knowledge holders, and he has logically moved to the final stage, but the gap now is at the back end. Where does he produce? Okay? For an individual knowledge holder trying to get their product to the market, it does not make sense for them, when you're penetrating the market, to build your own facility. So there isn't an available facility where they can go, produce under the right conditions. Most of the time, HACCP, if you're going for a complementary medicine across, with SAPRA approval, you need a GMP facility. There isn't a facility available within a decent distance for these indigenous knowledge holders to access so that they can produce for the market. Now, this is a key gap, because I think that's where the investment needs to go, rather than supporting research. Because trust me, being a researcher, if you're given money, you will stay in the lab for as long as possible, because it's what you love to do, but with no intent. And I was having a conversation with Prof. Vinesh Maraj earlier around how universities are incentivized to, they're actually not incentivized to take good ideas to the market. And they will stay in the lab if you give them money to stay in the lab. So the investment needs to be placed at the back end of the technology readiness level, which is an open access facility that allows these knowledge holders to bring their technologies in there, produce the market entry samples, and when they gain sufficient market penetration to secure an investor that can justify investing in their own facility. And the problem is, these facilities, there's few, very few, across the country, are located in the big metros. The indigenous knowledge holders don't sit in the big metros. And this is why, as Uvu Bio, we're driving a project at the moment to create a similar hub. This is going to work across the agricultural and the indigenous knowledge sector, to create an agro-processing hub that can help, that fills that gap, that allows it to take those technologies, produce it so they have sufficient volumes to get into the market, and also create an opportunity to move away from wild harvested indigenous knowledge or endogenous plant material. Create an opportunity to farm these so you have a security of supply. And this is, I think, to a certain extent what Patrick was talking about earlier, is that a big company like Tiger Brands cannot commit when you cannot guarantee security of supply. And this has been the challenge that I've been chatting to some of the knowledge holders. They have a market. They have people that are ready to sign offtake agreements, but they're reluctant because they can't guarantee that they can supply this.
I'll skip you, Patrick, because I think you will come in last, given where you are in the chain, if you don't mind. I think the three there's a synergy there.
Yeah. So on your question of sustainability, for us, that's less of a risk for one simple reason. Most, if not all, IKS beneficiaries or the holders generally, they've got plenty of land. So there's no question of lack or insufficient raw material. There's plenty of raw material, purely because they're all in communal land. And I grew up in a communal land, which is why I started 20 farms in the first place. Now, once you move away from that, then you start focusing on how do you farm commercially. Because picking up there and there and there and there, that is a nightmare, because you never get the quantities you need, and the harvesting process sometimes can actually kill the plants. That's where you need to focus on. Now, fast forward to the step of then thinking and behaving like a farmer, commercial farmer. The land that you have, how do you use it efficiently? So we do boreholes to ensure that irrigation is not dependent on the rain, consistent, therefore then you can predict the harvesting seasons across that. But for us, the biggest challenge that we've seen is that, as Michael mentioned earlier on, that we feel that too much money is spent on research and less on the guys manufacturing skills, because they get that. And the IP, this discussion I have it all the time with the professors and doctors about it. Between peer reviews and their research, the guys hoard their knowledge. You have to fight with them to share the IP. Like, guys, we have a raw material way. What can I do with it? I only know 1 or 2 recipes. What more can I do to make a juice, to make a flour, to make a lotion, and 10 other things? That information comes in drips and drips, and that is frustrating. And if I can show you the projects that we've been to, what beneficiaries, the amount of money that's been spent in infrastructure and machines, by the way. So the question of where the money is spent, for me, is a bit skewed. We need to change, but rather also be spent directly with the beneficiaries by being on the ground with them. Sending them emails on how to do certain things does not work with the beneficiaries, because they are not that skilled naturally, right? So you need to be on the ground with them, show them the steps, and be patient enough, and not over a 2-year process. I mean, we know that businesses normally, they go bankrupt with you in the first 3 years. So you know where the risk is. So be with them for the first 5 years of that. And then you guarantee a bit more success.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think, the big problem here is, if you listen to all the sessions that were held previously, everyone thanks DSTI. It was like a sugar mommy, sugar daddy type relationship, right? And the real question here is, for researchers, maybe that's okay, right? Because we know that they're filling a gap that is filled by knowledge, and it's not always easy to extract back the commercial value for knowledge. The reality is, we've taken that same thinking and applied it through to the projects or the enterprises, and they also get up there and thank DSTI. And they shouldn't, because we should cut off grants, first thing. There's no business that is grown that will be sustainable and compete in a commercial environment that's built on a steady supply of grants and subsidies, right? It just makes the path towards any level of commercialization difficult. We build businesses that are bloated, that have excessive costs, because we never have to think about, will we recover this back? So if we clearly delineate where research stops and commercialization starts, cut off the grants. Blended finance, zero interest finance, absolutely, right at the beginning. But very quickly, we need to move to a space where a business should be able to support itself even on commercial money. Whether you're IKS or not is not the issue, right? That's point number one. Number two is, there isn't enough money. So I hear everyone saying there's too much money for research. I'm not going to touch the researchers' money. But for true drive to commercialize enterprises, you need private money to be attracted to come into this space. But private money doesn't just come in because it's IKS. Private money comes in because if I invest R1 million in an enterprise in this space, I will make more than if I'd let that money sit in the bank, knowing that the risk that the bank's going to go under is zero, but the risk that a small enterprise could go under is most probably 4 out of 5. I need to make at least 5 to 10 times what I put in. And suddenly, you start to think about every one of the projects we hold out and say, here's a great commercial success. Would that project be able to attract commercial money? If you look at other industries, tech industry, 90% of investment into enterprises in the tech industry comes out of private money, not government money. In this space, 90% of what has gone into 99% of what has gone in here has all been government money. And we have to change that. But we can only change that when we start tracking the successes of the commercialized enterprises, but the money that flows through the bank accounts of those enterprises. Not how many reports we're able to produce, how many peer-reviewed studies we're able to show. That's great for research, doesn't work for commercialization. That's number one. Number two, though, is we then have to change how that money, when it flows in, is governed. Because commercial enterprises need to use the money to achieve very specific outcomes within very specific timelines. And majority of the projects we've worked with, even in their commercial phase, still end up fighting with many of the agencies to say, can we get support, whether it's an ARC or a CSIR? And sometimes you question if we are really putting a commercial lens to this and saying we need to have competitiveness on how those enterprises get supported for some of these activities. Because that's the only way we start to move them away from being completely dependent on DSTI and all of this free money. But it's not free money because they spend 5 years running businesses that still can't pay them a salary. So it's not free money. They're investing their time and effort. It costs them more sometimes than what we put on paper. So that's my thoughts.
Our technology is letting us down here. Go ahead, please.
right, yeah.
Hold your thought, write the question, what you want to say down so you don't forget. Because I also want to put one in, but just after you, if you don't mind, Patrick. I think we need to just, and I want us to circle back to it, is that where does the whole IKS and the DST come from and what they're trying to achieve, I'm going to say politically, and how that maybe is contributing to some of the issues that you are seeing. But over to you.
I'd like to be very haphazard in the way that I address your question. I think first, I don't want to cause doom to the researchers and students. Once we are too pessimistic, we are discouraging you from keeping on trying. I guess we're here to help you unlock, to move to the next level. I'm asking myself, do we really want to do the end-to-end, the full value chain, or do you want to stick and be experts in? It's quite huge. I'm a pharmacist, so within the healthcare, there's the raw material, there's packaging material, there's distribution, there's manufacturing, there's lab testing. Sometimes wanting to do everything, it dilutes, the level of your success. So I'm trying to encourage those that think that they are expert researchers to probably stick to researching. I'll give an example. I worked for Pfizer years ago, and Pfizer, we had blockbuster drugs, Viagra, Lipitor, etc. We got to a stage where the R&D was so costly that they had to reduce the budget on R&D and rather go to universities, to R&D centers of excellence to get a product that's close to, that just passed the first stage clinical trials and ready now to transition to the final studies before commercialization. My point here is that there is room for research, okay? I'll give example back to Tiger Brands. The Tiger Brands, we've gone back to the basics, of course. We've cut down what we don't believe adds value or is not the core to the business. And it's starting to come out clearly that perhaps R&D is not our forte. We should maybe outsource that function and get what is ready to be taken to the next level. I saw the dried fruit, freeze-dried fruit veg, that looks so good. And it's packaged in brown papers or glass, etc. I thought something like that, if it were to be pitched to the right commercial person within our business, it would just fly. It would just need them to do the shelf life studies, stability. They would have to do the packaging to make sure that they've got the correct artwork, labeling, marketing to push it to the next level. Production, manufacturing, we are experts in that. So my point here is that it is awareness. I'm not too sure who the audience is, but if it is students or researchers, this is the kind of platform where you need to attend and be and understand where the help will come from, and also for you to reassess yourself as to whether are you a business person, do you want to go all the way, or do you want to just specialize in just crafting, you know, the intermediate that is ready to go to the next level, and find a way to market yourself as a preparatory stage rather than a full circle where you're going to have to do the listing, you have to chase and do everything, because the full circle is quite challenging. So just to share another example with Tiger Brands, our tomatoes, of course the focus now is on farmers, because we've realized that with the climate change and everything that is going on in the world, if we don't look after the source of where we start our production, then we'll lose the plot. So there's a strong emphasis on our tomatoes. We grow them in Lutzville and in Limpopo, I think in Musina. So we give seeds for free to the farmers, but we set the quality standards. We accept what is good that meets our standards. So that is now, farmers, they are good at growing tomatoes or beans, but they need to understand that there's certain standards they need to match in order for us to take it to the next level. That's where it has worked. I mean, it's similar to your indigenous-based knowledge, where you can, I mean, currently we're moving away from, we're more focused now on health and wellness, you know, plant-based products. Here, who can, prepare yourselves and raise your hand and say that, look, we can do it. How can we support you? Not as a sugar daddy, a sugar mommy kind of arrangement, but as equal partners. So my point here is that awareness, because awareness, Prof was here, he's got a huge lab there in the UFS, which is a sinus, towards a sinus accreditation. And he says that he would invite you to go test, you know, because as you know, the producers or the commercialization would want evidence that your product works and you've met all the regulatory standards. So he's offering that. There's an offer this side. So it's for you to be aware where are these centers and the kind of support, but not going as an inferior partner, but going there as you're bringing your own IP there. So the end product, it will be a match of what you give to them and what you form as a whole. I'm not too sure if I've met your question, because I offered to go through it very haphazardly. I'm
No.
not too sure what your question was.
Don't worry, you've given us what we needed to hear. Seth, please.
Yeah, so obviously, myself and Makondo, we differ a little bit on the funding thing. Historically, we know the history. Anyone who was born, so I was born in the 70s, so I know what that looks like. White government, oppression, I know exactly what that looked like. So there was little to none investment in the IKA space. So currently, we do need that. However, we need to balance these two. We've seen, so initially, it was a matter of throw money at it and hopefully it works. And it worked. Percentage-wise, it's very low. But the money, like I said earlier on, I'll keep on saying this. And I've got proof of this because guys who in the space know that research component of it is huge. It's partnership between DSI, the universities, CSIR is there for a reason, which is good. But what we want to see happening is economical change. I sat here yesterday listening to 15 kids presenting their ideas. Rough around the edges, but some of them were good. And I've been invited to go join them in Univen at the end of this month so I can spend time with those students so I can hear their ideas and tell them how to work on them and make them better business concepts. So the funding part of it is non-negotiable because not many of us are from rich parents. I don't have rich parents. I had to work for everything I got. So to tell a child that, good luck, see you later, hopefully you succeed, it's never going to work. So you have to combine those two, but not at the extent where people then get spoiled and they get used to it, which is what has happened, unfortunately, to us when we first joined all of those beneficiaries. We found people were in the program for 10 years, and unfortunately, they got used to the bad habits of free handouts.
So, before you come in, I want you to think about as a country, right? I think we're really bad at commercialization, and we've got to talk about that. An example I know of is that I'm sure all of you parked somewhere. At OR Tambo, you see it, the parking lights that indicate an empty space versus it's green if there's a space and then it's red, so you can just look at the top.
The one that doesn't work most of the time.
Yeah. No, it works. It's South Africa's. So that was a South African invention. They tried to sell it locally. Nobody bought it. They then sold to an American company. So right now, AXA and every other airport has bought back former South African technology from the US. And it's not the only example we have of where we actually have absolutely amazing research and research outputs that sits there and gets stuck between the commercialization. And for me, it's, so what's the problem? But over to you, Deepak.
Yeah, I think the comment I was going to make actually ties in well with what you're saying. So the comment was actually on back of Michael's comment around private capital. That is essentially where we need to get that capital to scale into commercialization. Now, there's two problems with this. One, if I look at it generally around the startup space, there just isn't sufficient capital in South Africa to make those investments. So that's one of the hurdles to commercialization.
Can I give a naughty response and say if we took a percentage of what is coming out of the commissions, I'm sure we'd have it.
I would agree with that. But there is capital. Yes, there's nowhere near enough capital. So the capital that is available are being deployed on initiatives that are a sure bet. And I think this is where the ecosystem is not setting up the entrepreneurs and IK holders for success. In that, because of the heavy reliance on the early stage of the technology readiness ladder, you might refine a very good concept, but you take so long to refine that concept that you've missed the market opportunity. So when you go in front of a venture capital fund, who's going to provide you with the capital to get to the commercial, you actually don't have a good story to tell. And this is where we invest a lot of time in our businesses that we support, is building that rapid pipeline, is a fail fast and agility model So get out there as quickly as possible so you can understand what the market wants, so you can retrofit for the market and get that investor excited about your investment. Because think about it, there's a number of good business ideas in South Africa across multiple sectors. The easiest low-hanging fruit for an investor is in the software and the AI space. Okay? So you're competing with that pot of money, so you have to have a really good story to tell. And I think that's where we lack from that perspective. We focus heavily on the front end. Look, the technology is critical. Without it, you don't have a product. But we see that to the refinement at the nth degree is what the investor wants. No. The investor wants you to know what your market wants and get there as quickly as possible, because once you're in the market, refining is easy. So get to the market and refine your product rather than waiting to get a perfect product and you missed a market opportunity.
I think I should open the floor now to open for questions from the floor, looking at our time as well. So I saw one there, another one here, and here I've got these the four. Please go ahead, right at the back, sir. Hopefully there's a mic coming.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the panel. I do appreciate your comments. I think, in my observation, the whole of Africa is that we missed the plot on bio-based products because if you look at colonialism, was driven mostly looking for resources. Now, that venture focused on minerals. So after independence, when African countries got their independence, our forefathers, leaders, never turned back, so they focused, they looked at mining as the source of job creation. And I think like now, because we are trying to reach a dead end to say, okay, because of fossil fuels, mining has got limitations. So we need to look at other sources of industries. And that's why South Africa is ahead if you compare to other African countries. Now, but if you go to Sweden, I've been to Sweden. Sweden is one of the leading countries in the world on value additions using bio-based products. So I would say countries like Tiger Brands are rigid, because if you look at their products, how many of them has got bio-based ingredients that are healthy? So that's the question. So most of South African corporations, they are slightly behind in world trends. Because if you go to Sweden, for example, blueberries is a European plant. When you go to Sweden, you'll find that blueberry is in all products. It is in yogurt, it is in cornflakes, and many others. It's the way Rainbows is trying to spread, going to other industries. So I would say that, and then the other point that has been made there on contract manufacturing. That's a key bottleneck because I know most of the what we call contract manufacturers in Johannesburg, for example. They will not entertain a small business because they push volumes. You go there, you want to make 1,000 products to test a market. They'll throw you out because for them what they do, liters every day. So we need space for contract manufacturing in different centers. That is also quite a key aspect. And I think that the program organizers, in my view, should not have separated the two events, A and B. So that group should have been here as well. Because what is going on here is important to feed back that side. But of course, we understand because of time. Remember, the conference has got a few days. You can't squeeze everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You didn't tell us your name, sir, so please tell us your name and where you're from so that we just have a context as well.
So I'm in academia. I'm at Wits University.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. There's the mic.
I'm Matu Mabukano. I'm from the National Research Foundation. I have 2 points to make. The first one is on the statement that was made that big companies won't sign supply agreements if you can't guarantee security of supply. I mean, that's a major statement for a small company. There's no way that you can guarantee supply unless you are allowed space to grow and get to a stage where you can do that. So I think there seriously need to be a reflection on that type of statement. The second one is on the point that was made by the facilitator about the technology that was developed here, but only bought by an American company, and then we bought it after the American company had bought it. This is the gap that has been identified. I used to work for Technology Innovation Agency. There's a former colleague in this audience, maybe she can clarify better. They seem to be the only ones who fund technologies before they're pre-revenue. So my proposal would be that the big companies like Tiger Brands with their ESD, if they were to allocate probably about just 10% of that money to early stage technology development, that technology probably would have been tested in the market with that money and captured market in South Africa before it would. Those are just my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. This lady there.
Yeah, I just want to agree with the previous speaker that this was a really important perspective.
No, we can't.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh.
I wish that I had been more embedded in the program. Put it by your mouth.
Share your feedback with the DSTI, thanks, colleagues. But I agree, I know that there are lots of bio-innovators who sell their IP and the technology to American companies, and the problem with that is then we never scale the industry here. So I think actually our problem is a market development problem. And I wonder how we translate your insights into thinking about how you build those incentives. Because for me, yes, I agree about the actual infrastructure, the manufacturing capability. I do agree that that's a gap. But then there are other market development gaps, right? Like the lack of coordination between government departments. It can't all be on DSTI. There's clearly Agricultural Ministry, Finance, Trade Ministry. They need to work better together. You need like a clear prioritization across government departments that move towards a goal, right? If we think about a country like Korea and how they developed their cosmetic and beauty industry, you know, they had a central body that coordinates financing, that coordinates trade agreements, that coordinates retail development. You need some kind of prioritization in that space. So I don't think it's all infrastructure, right? I agree with the infrastructure and the manufacturing capability, but there's something else about market development. And I know this is broader than IKS. I mean, some of this is about established industry, having space to innovate and grow. And then to the point about Tiger Brands, like, or any other company, I mean, this was a topic of discussion last year in the B20 as well. What are the connection points in the big private sector, big corporates, to these R&D spaces? And is that a productive relationship? Because there needs to be appetite and capacity on both ends, right? So I actually think it's a market development problem, and that's not for one side to solve. And then I do think like it's a prioritization problem. Like if in the last few sessions we've heard, okay, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, then there needs to be, everybody needs to be able to collaborate to really think, okay, how do you actually work on the market development of that, right? Because it's not just a handful of businesses, it's not just a handful of factories. You really need to think about the entire supply chain, and where we really want to be as a country is on the higher end. So I just, I guess it's a provocation to this, because this is bringing a very specific perspective, which I don't think has been present throughout the rest of the summit, but it needs to be linked to the other sides to really unlock what the problem is and how we solve it. And maybe you guys can just reflect on that.
Thank you. Is there any, there's one more with, I'm going to take all three and then we will summarize before we step on other people's toes. Oh, I see it's 4. 1, 2, 3,
Okay,
4.
I'll go. Okay, thank you for the insightful presentations. My question is in regards to private money and private investments, in regards to IKS, and I'm curious about the resources available to assist us in structuring these kind of projects. Like, for instance, how do you go about negotiating equity? What agreements do you have to go into? Do you sign MOUs? Do you do shareholders agreements? I think we are, as entrepreneurs, we are a bit in the dark in regards to how do we handle if people, private finance comes to you and says, okay, we like your idea, we like what you're doing, but then we don't know, I mean, what resources are available to assist us in structuring projects that protect us and also protect the community, but also provides community some type of equity in regards to the projects that we are putting together.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much for the session. It really feels like a breath of fresh air because I've got an accounting background and this IKS stuff has really been playing with my mind. So thank you so much for the speakers. My name is Busisiwe Mahlare and I have a wellness company. So we produce smoothies and they are made from IKS, African Botanicals. So I am in a tension that I would like you, the panel, to please help me with. So when I talk to the science people, they want to keep me in the science forever, and it's like we're not moving. Then when I talk to the business people, it's like they are also not getting the IKS research things. I'm like, what on earth am I, like, not explaining properly, you know? So now we've done all the tests, even more than the basic test required. But now translating this to the business people is like, okay, how do we go about this? I've already tested the market, the product, there's like, people are very interested in what we're doing, that is going well. And then for Tiger Brands, I talk to you afterwards and maybe tell you more of my product that I think you could also help us with. But then you talked about private equity, and only foreign private equity actually is interested, but then when you talk to South Africans, they're like, don't do that. To actually do. And then, yeah, so it's just all these tensions that I would like you to please just elaborate on how we should go about it. And then the other thing is South Africa doesn't, it feels like when you are building in the IKS section, you are building the systems around it too. So you find yourself having now to take, to buy a farm so that if you don't have a farm, so that you can like have your, oh, thank you. You have to get a farm to plant your whatever you're doing, and then now you have to have a facility, and it's like you have to be everything to actually move, which is overwhelming. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to put out there. Thank you.
I think you should maybe let us respond before you go for another one.
No, this is the last ones, and then we're going to close because we're out of time.
Good afternoon. My name is Khomotso, and thank you for this opportunity. My question is to Tiger Brands. I think I got the tail end of your statement when I walked in, where you said your focus is on youth in terms of your enterprise. So my question is, myself, I'm in the sports industry, and with our travel in Africa, there was a masterclass that said the sports economy in Africa is non-existent. So with the manufacturing space that we're in sports, then we try to diversify and see how we can open the value chain and the sports economy. And part of the diversification was then the plant-based nutrition that you were speaking on. So my question to you is that with the discoveries of new economies in certain sectors, with my age taking me out of the, you know, which is another frustration in South Africa, that you have to be a certain age to access certain opportunities. So in terms of your cut-off age, with the new discoveries that we are finding in new economies, then what would be my the help that you would offer me with the economies and the discovering of trying to merge the IKS in the sports economy and opening the economic opportunities, as we see that there are no job opportunities in South Africa. So how would you help a company like myself, exploring the plant-based indigenous wellness in the sports sector?
Thank you. And then the final question. The session after this has actually got funders on, including SIDFA and TIA, just for those who are looking for how you get funded.
Good afternoon, everyone. Some of my questions have been taken already, so I'll just go back to one of the things that I got from the speakers. And this is a very crucial issue about funding. Sometimes people, most especially government, give us funding to support startups. And that funding, most of the time when you are, government have invested in you, you find myself as a student entrepreneur going to actually buy myself a car and not actually investing in my business as I had indicated that I'm going to invest in my business. However, I cannot grow my business without funding. So maybe as stakeholders, there is something that can be done around the policy of investment. Instead of saying that I'm giving you a grant for you to support your business, maybe you can say we're giving you an investment and we are hoping that in the next 5 years you're going to give us our money back. And that's a contract between me as an investor and you as an entrepreneur. I think maybe something that works around those lines, because I also have been working in an NPO. And believe me, when you actually give someone funding, they are going to actually use the money in a different way in which they can't even account for. But if there is a contract between the funder and also the grantee, then you have a binding line that if I'm not delivering, if I'm not giving you your money back with interest, like there are steps that you can actually scale up on that regards.
Thank you. Who'd like to go first? There were a lot to you, Tiger Brands. You can go first.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Sorry, a disclaimer. I'm not in commercial. No, let me answer your question. First, the plant-based nutritional product. I'll get you in touch with someone who will articulate it very clearly for you. Age will not be restrictive if the offering is good. Okay. So it is the offering. I mean, if you've got something that's so good, I think about 2 years ago, the company, they invested. All right. They invested a huge amount of money to a company, small company in Cape Town that was making plant-based burgers. And it was just, the decision was made, just like that, because they thought it was quite an innovative idea, and this was more futuristic, and they just went for it. So all the other potential obstacles were just put aside, and the focus was the future and the size of the opportunity. Maybe not now, but in the future. The second one, please do remind me. There's a department that's set up for that. That's got a young lady who's running it, and she's a good person. She will listen to you. Secondly, on, I can't remember what else from Tiger. I think it was something about the equity. ESD. So if you refer now to the website and look for Tiger Brands ESD, it's very clear, and they go as far as inviting you to contact them. I'll read it up quickly for you. To contact the person to guide you, to package your offering, and to take you through. And this is also under the same person who is running this department. So it's designed, and yeah, it's good. There's a huge amount of money that's gone into this. Okay, and Tiger is not intending here to make money out of it. So it is an offering to upskilling, to help startups. So it's focused. It's a private, investment. Lesser of an equity, but more of an investment. And the beauty here is that you'll also get guidance and support, and work very closely with the commercial teams and marketing and R&D on the full process. The ideation, the whole, phase or process towards the product launch and commercialization, and the 5-year plan with their volumes and the numbers, and if it doesn't work out, they'll have to figure out a way so that it is clear to you that it's a doable, it's not a doable project. We also set a target on the ROIC, the return on investment. So there's a very clear and guideline on the commercialization and a new product, new business, from the scope, the risks, the risk mitigation, first year volumes, second year, etc., with the market. It's done very professionally. I'll help you to get in touch with that. I'm not too sure. I think it was probably you. And also it helps if your products, they've got some kind of alignment to any of the business strategies or categories within Tiger Brands. I can tell you, and also, it goes beyond the product. There's packaging, the new packaging that is inert, that is sustainable, that is environmentally friendly. So don't restrict the IKS to just a product. So I guess this is technologies. Okay. I think that is all that came mind. Just a comment was on the boundaries. We set the projects where we don't get support or a positive feedback, and we restrict here in South Africa. I truly suggest that you should go and look beyond, and don't put restrictions on or boundaries on where you are bidding to try and give out an offering. Okay.
Thank you.
I think thanks.
Deepa?
I've tried to make some notes, but I think I might have missed some, but I'm sure the rest of the panel will respond to them. I think there was a comment around security of supply for big companies being a bold statement. Look, and I'm going to ask Patrick to correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not a bold statement, it's a fact. If a big company needs to roll out a product that's dependent on an ingredient that you're supplying, if you can't guarantee that supply, they're not going to sign an offtake with you. But that doesn't mean that that's the end of the road. That just means that you pivot. That's a business-to-business relationship. You pivot to a B2C relationship, which is selling directly to the customer. But there's always still going to be a problem there. If you selling to a customer that becomes a routine customer, if you can't guarantee that that product's going to be on the shelf every month, you're going to lose that customer. So it's not a bold statement, it's a fact. It needs to be factored in. If you cannot guarantee supply of the product that you want to make, then you're probably in the wrong business and you shouldn't be producing that product. So these are some of the hard truths that unfortunately you have to take into account when going into a business. There was a comment around the contract manufacturing facility, and I think I've stressed it earlier. It is a gap, and it's a gap that needs to be filled in the right areas. The gentleman mentioned that a contract manufacturing facility is not going to talk to you if he's talking small amounts, and this is where the challenge is for smaller businesses. So that is where I think investment needs to be made. That's where I think some of the grant funding needs to go, because that facility doesn't need to make a huge profit, but it should not make a loss. So it's not going to be a bankable business, but it should be able to wash its own face so that it can support the smaller businesses. And those smaller businesses shouldn't be there forever. They need to graduate out of that into a bigger facility. Around deal structuring and negotiation. So I would invite you to reach out to me or anybody at Uvubio. We run some master classes in this. It's a very important thing if you're going into negotiations around investment. If you're not suitably educated about negotiations, equity sharing, etc., if you go into that meeting and you reach for a calculator, trust me, you're getting screwed already. So it's very important and I can't give you a full answer on that. It's a whole training program that you need to go through so that you can understand that particular market. I made a comment here about research and business comms gap. So I think somebody made a comment around researchers say something and then business wants something else. Yeah. That's a valid point, okay? Who's going to give you money? Business, right? So I would lean towards listening to them. Because a researcher, as he says, he wants to get all the I's and T's crossed and dotted. So he's not going to let you move to business. Business wants to understand the technology. When you're talking to an investor, trust me, the least thing that they worry about is whether your technology is going to work. They trust that your technology is going to work because of where you're coming from. You need to answer all of the other business relevant questions. So it's critical to make sure that you draw the distinction and not heavily focus on research. And this is coming from a scientist that spent 25 years as a scientist. I've learned that that's where we want to keep you. But you want money, you want investment, you need to keep the businessman satisfied. And then there was a comment around coordination of government departments. I think it came from here. Very valid point, right? Our government departments don't necessarily talk to each other. Sometimes they work opposite each other. But there's also a response to that. If you're relying on government to fix all your problems as a small business, that's a problem in its own right. Take ownership of something and drive your own business. Government's not here to make everything work for you. They're here to aid you and support you. So if there's stuff that needs to be coordinated, take the lead and try to get that. And that's where some of these advocacy organizations are good because they speak as a whole for the industry. Market development, I think as small businesses, we don't take enough opportunity to already develop markets. The Africa Free Trade Agreement, I don't think we leverage on that well enough, but I also don't think that government markets the ability of them to intervene in those types of negotiations sufficiently. But the key point there, the key takeaway from that is take ownership of your own business. Don't rely on government to fix everything for you. They're not here to spoon feed you. Because government can only provide support up until a point, and then they have to exit. Because they're going to drain the fiscus supporting an industry that needs to drive itself. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you've covered quite a lot. Last closing comments?
Yeah, there isn't much left to say. Yeah. I think, look, and I just want to go back to this innovation, the little parking thing. The reality is there's two very different perspectives there, right? From a national impact perspective, we may say that's a failure. Here's a South African innovation, left the country, was commercialized elsewhere, and ultimately we lost the opportunity to create the jobs and manufacture and do all of this. But I'm an entrepreneur, and you are here as an entrepreneur to make the decisions that are in the best interest of your business and your financial well-being, right? Because without that, you don't have a sustainable business. And sometimes an innovation, irrespective of where it's developed, may find markets that are ready and are willing to pay for that innovation at a rate that makes it commercially viable elsewhere. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's actually a success for South African innovation ecosystem. The one key thing that we need to ask ourselves with all the investment being made into research is, are we funding in IP that gets externalized? Because if you fund some of this research to the very high TRL levels that we see, they're not available for many small, young entrepreneurs coming out of the communities where this research is happening. And in most cases, become great opportunities, whether it's a Tiger Brands or it's an international firm, to pick that up either on a license agreement, etc., and then commercialize that. So yes, there might have been value, but we've lost the entrepreneurial value and impact that could come from that. So sometimes we do want to commercialize at a very early stage some of these innovations, drive them through the commercial enterprises rather than through the research infrastructure. And as it matures, the business that it's in is growing and increasing in value along the way. Okay.
Thank you.
Stop there.
One, two. Mute, unmute. Sorry. So, for me, guys, I must break it down into as simple as possible. If you have a product that you believe works, ask yourself a question: what problem are you solving? Once you answer that question, move to the next step of saying that, what does it take for me to manufacture it? Some of the products, and most of the IKS products, by the way, they already are products because your granny or whoever else that you let it from is already a product. And the question then is scale. The question of scale then is easier to sort out because even if you cannot secure the space, again, IKS products or source material are from land. So don't ever make excuse about land. There's plenty of land. On the issue of research, you've heard here, ever since for the last 2 days already, what you're hearing is research. So the IP is available as far as what you can do with it. My only advice to you is that start small, but start. Don't get discouraged by all the big talks again, because when you come to any investor to ask you, what do you have to sell? You better have a product. And say, my neighbor and that one are using it, because we all post on WhatsApps. How many of you post your own products? That's your market right there. So stop looking for something that you already have a market, but start small, but start and get moving. The fine-tuning will always come in time. The funding, unfortunately, no one will fund you something that you don't believe in yourself. And if you want to get banks money, the one financials, which you won't have if you haven't started marketing yourself and selling something. So sell, sell, sell. And lastly, don't forget to protect yourself. Trademarking, patents, those two are important things. They're expensive, yes, but when you start selling small in your own communities or among your circle of friends, you then make enough money to actually pay for patenting and protect yourself. Because if you don't do that, someone will steal your idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, can we please give our panel a round of applause? And when you give feedback, because I'm sure there's going to be a feedback session, please give the feedback about the integration of the sessions so that next time we are able to take this to a high level. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I think it was a really, really interesting panel. Thank you.